My name is Roya Rastegar. On behalf of the American Cinematheque, welcome to Black Culture Remix, Why the 1990s Are Even Fresher Today. This panel is presented by the American Cinematheque and the African American Film Critics Association on the occasion of Emmy season, and the American Cinematheque's year-long retrospective on the 90s Black New Realism filmmaking wave, Perpetratin Realism. We have a powerhouse panel of guests today. Producer-director Stephanie Allain, legendary actor Samuel L. Jackson, director-actor Mario Van Peebles, award-winning actor Wendy Raquel Robertson, and brilliant new talent actor Jabari Banks. The conversation will be moderated by Professor Felice Blake, one of the curators of the Perpetratin Realism retrospective, and the incredible Gil Robertson, president of the AAFCA.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome, everybody.
Yeah.
So let's jump right into this. The 1990s were an incredible period, particularly for Black audiences who saw themselves being presented in pop culture in a very significant way. Where were each of you in that moment as an artist, and how do you remember yourself back then? And we'll start with ladies first. Let's start with Stephanie.
Hey, everybody. So happy to be here with friends and colleagues. In the 90s, well, let's see, in 1990, I was a very young creative executive at Columbia Pictures. I had just come out of the reader's room and was finally in the big house and read a script called Boys in the Hood. So that was my very first movie that I ever supervised. And yeah, so that was where I was.
Ms. Robinson?
Wow, the 1990s. Well, I was fresh out of Howard University. I graduated in '89, so I came out with a mindset, I'm ready to take on the world in the industry, and found it to be very different than I anticipated, and very different than what Howard had prepared me for. I was a theater major and wasn't as prepared as I thought for television and film. But to piggyback on what Stephanie said, it wasn't until I saw Boys in the Hood that I realized how desensitized I had become to my neighborhood, because John captured every bit of Los Angeles that I grew up in. So it was a reality check for me in the 1990s, a big one.
Now, Jabari, were you even a factor?
No, I was born on the back half of the 90s, 98 I was born, so I kind of missed the 90s, but I remember them from TV and film. Feels like I was there, but I wasn't.
Got you. Mr. Van Peebles.
I didn't see the 90s in this sort of singular sense because I had seen by osmosis, I suppose, my father's experience in '71. And it was we saw how the doors shut in '71. So when I was able to do my movie inside the studio system, New Jack City in '91, it was understanding what Dad had gone through in '71, Sweet Sweetback's Badass Song. So I saw it, I think I had a unique advantage in that I saw a continuum, and I saw that it was super important that we were there not just to play ball, but to own the team. That this time around we needed to be in there and show diversity with all that.
Yeah, I was in rehab. I came out of rehab in '90.
But own the team.
I went to rehab in '90.
And Mr. Jackson.
I'm trying to remember because I was on drugs. I missed a lot. So I think I got sober in '90, and then I did Jungle Fever, and then The Call came, and I came to Hollywood. So that's how I remember the 90s, as a blur of me finding out how the business really worked, because I hadn't done that many movies other than the Spike Lee films and Coming to America. So I was learning how to navigate the business of films as opposed to theater.
So it sounds like for each of you, the 1990s were very transformative.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure.
Felice?
Yeah, Wendy, you mentioned that you came and were ready to take on the world, but I wonder for each of you, did you have a sense in your body that you were a part of a major transformation in culture at that time?
You know, I think because I was so headstrong in coming out of Howard, and the one thing I loved about attending an HBCU, it just, you know, there's nothing that you cannot do, and it prepared me in that way. But I felt once I came back to LA, I'm born and raised in Los Angeles. So coming back and trying to break into an industry that was foreign to me, even though I'm from here, it was still so foreign to me. I felt like I was, you know, an imposter trying to get into something that was so connected to me. And I really had a difficult time in trying to not only get an agent in the traditional sense, but just trying to get into an industry that I felt so connected to. So it was a breakthrough. It was a wake-up call. And it was a call for me to look at trying to get into an industry from a very different capacity. It's like, how am I going to break in? I literally had to break in and knock down doors to get into this industry. I didn't feel a part of it at all. So it was a huge transition I had to go through.
Yeah, for me, I think I remember the New York Times took a picture, and it was John Singleton, Spike, myself, the Hudlin brothers, Patty Rich, Charles Lane, and the covers, it said something, Hollywood's got to have them or something, and we were considered the Black Pack. And I remember the reporter talking to me and saying, well, what do you feel about that? And I said, well, you know, they've had the Rat Pack, they've had the Brat Pack, and now there's the Black Pack. So it's like there's a wave, and the key is, can you stay on your surfboard? Because no one's going to get to be flavor of the month for 30 years. Right? So you have to understand how to navigate that. And I remember when my dad did Sweetback, and he really didn't get another big job offer after that. I talked to him about that, and he said, man, son, he said, listen, if you go into a pool hall and you pretend you can't play pool, and you take everybody's money and you whip their ass, you can't go back in that same pool hall. Mm-hmm. When I made Sweetback, I made it without their marketing team, without their permission, without their bank, without their, you know, any of that stuff, their studio execs. And so I had taken that situation, and I knew I wouldn't be invited back. And so I had a whole different concept of it when I came here. I was like, okay, this is how I got to try to navigate that and see if I can stay on the surfboard for a little bit and show us in a different light.
Mm. Yeah. I think for me, I was a reader who'd just been promoted at Columbia, and not until John walked into my office allegedly to get a job as a reader, but really to pitch Boys in the Hood. And I sat down and read that script. Did I realize, it was truly my aha moment. I realized, oh, this is why I'm here. Because I went to school in Inglewood. I knew these kids, and just seeing them, it was such a call to, it was a mission to get this movie made. That's how I felt. And it really wasn't until there was a 20-minute standing ovation at Cannes where I realized, like, oh, shite, this is something big. Like, this is connecting on a level that's deeper, far deeper than I imagined. That was personal to me. It was really connecting on a more global scale.
Mm-hmm. Sam?
I'm still trying to rifle through what happened. You know, I know that, yeah, after Jungle Fever, I ended up, you know, getting here and doing things like White Sands and not Clear and Present Danger, but the other one, stuff like that. And then I started to do things, or I actually started to read scripts that I thought were important for me, like when I did Time to Kill and things like that, or when I had the opportunity to do a Great White Hype, and I was the actual lead of a story playing a Don King character, and trying to create all these things that I hoped would keep me in the flow and not be a flash in the pan. So I was very focused on trying to find or trying to choose the right projects, because that becomes a very interesting kind of thing for you to have to navigate, that you're not going to auditions, people are sending you things and you got to sift through them and figure out which one's going to be the thing that propels you to the next place or allows you to stay in a certain place so that you can advance your career. So I was very focused on that and watching the things that were going on around me and who all the other people were, because I mean, there was a point where every script I read had Denzel's, Fish's, Forrest, somebody's fingerprints on it. You know, I didn't care about that. You know, I was like, well, if they don't do the job, I'll certainly do it. And I was happy to do that, you know. And then it reached a point where people were calling me to ask me that same question, you know, have you turned down anything lately? And I could say, well, yeah. And, you know, and pass that information on to them. So trying to navigate and figure it out, but still gathering a fan base and what that means to have people watch your films and say they like them, to figure out if you are becoming that actor that you wanted to be, that I watched on screen. Or I don't know if I'll ever become Sydney, you know, but I want to become somebody like that, you know, that people revere, want to see their films and admire. So, you know, it was a great time to make that surge. And, you know, Hollywood was in an interesting place then, you know, I mean, co-starring roles, paid well, and, you know, they were just throwing money at stuff, trying to gather an audience. So I was happy to be there. Like New Jack and all that stuff was going on around us. You know, I remember being in that, the dueling crackheads, me and, you know, Chris. Chris was Pookie and I was Gator. You know, they were both out there in the streets, you know, and Gator became this, you know, character that everybody had in their house. You know, he was that guy. Everybody had a cousin, nephew, brother, somebody that was on crack and stealing shit, you know.
And a reminder to our audience to please send us your questions. We'll have a Q&A period after we finish this portion of the interview. So were there differences in terms of the accessibility and support between film and TV? Was one medium more accepting, more supportive than the other?
Wow. That's the hard question in a way, because there used to be that distinction. You know, I wanted to do TV shows. That was, you know, I watch TV all the time. I've been watching TV since I was a kid. So I wanted to do TV. My agents and managers said, no, you can't do TV. You know, you're either going to be this or you're going to be that. And we want you to be this because there was more money in this. Wow. So I was saying, well, I want to go back and do a play. And they were like, oh, hell no, you're definitely not doing that. So, you know, that was a distinctive line that happened during the 90s, that it was great to be a TV star. I mean, I had sort of worked in TV because I was Bill Cosby's stand-in for 2 years on the Cosby Show. So I understood what it was, but you know, they weren't gonna let me do TV. And I had done my requisite Law and Order in New York, so I was kind of done.
Wow. Well, you know, for me, I'll jump in. TV was one of the things that did come easier for me in terms of it being a welcome mat. I did want to touch upon this. It was a time for me in the 90s where, you know, Shelley Garrett and what he did for theater. I did the Shelley Garrett route for like 2 years and doing tours, you know, beauty shop and all of that. And then working alongside many people that I ended up getting into TV with, Kim Whitley and some other incredible comics. But what I saw in the 90s, it was very comedy driven. And I ended up working with Rondell Sheridan in his first comedy role on Minor Adjustments. And then from that led into the Steve Harvey Show, which was in the 90s. And I just saw so many male comics being the leads and being supported by strong African-American women. That was the trend that I started to see, you know, as you looked around, and the D.L. Hughley's, the Fresh Prince, you know, all of those shows started coming up with comedy, even, you know, the ensemble shows with A Different World and all of that. So it felt like it was a strong time for TV and comedy or camera comedy.
I think, on my side, which was the feature side, TV was like the poor stepchild of film. You know what I mean? Like
Right,
it was
right.
definitely segregated in that way. The joke's on us now, of course, because television has elevated so many voices. So one of the big differences, I think, in the 90s, there was a lot of comedy on TV. We saw ourselves in comedic roles on television. But now, wow, there's just everything, which is, you know, it's exciting. So yeah, times have changed.
Well, time changed because I mean, TV was, as you say, comedy driven, and it didn't start being a serious thing until like brothers were on Oz. You know, all of a sudden Oz was on.
Right.
You were like, oh shit, what is this?
Right.
You know,
The Wire.
and you started
Right.
saying, yeah, and then The Wire happened after
Yeah.
that. And then The Corner, you know, and all these
Yeah.
things started to happen. But that was when cable became this powerful thing where
Mhm.
you could tell poignant stories, and
Right.
you didn't have to capture an audience for a half an hour and run with them, or the only like Black characters they knew were in the sitcoms, or the Black cop who was on Law and Order,
Right.
or the, you know, they didn't even have a Black lawyer. They just had Black cop and Black criminals, you know, so
Right.
that was that. So it didn't change until the long format of cable happened, and the dramatic aspect of us being the protagonists and, you know, all those other things started to happen.
Mhm.
Things interesting.
And I wanted to do it, but my agent was like, oh no, you still can't do it.
Oh.
One of
Yeah.
the things interesting with television is you don't want to sleep on the power of coming into someone's living room on the regular. That dynamic, I remember I was in South Africa and we were talking about two favorite shows of South Africa when apartheid fell. And they were Miami Vice with a white leading man and a Black leading man, and The Cosby Show. And I'm not talking about The Cosby Show about the person, I'm talking about the phenomenon of the show. And then apartheid fell. And there's a 20-year lag. So if you look at it, you say, okay, Melvin Gordon Ozzie in the 70s, early 70s, then the 90s, that's that 20-year lag. Then you take another 20-year lag, and we have The Cosby Show. But the 20 years after that, all those little white kids in Iowa that would never meet a clean-cut African-American family like the Huxtables could conceive of it, could
Right.
grow up on it, and vote for the Obamas.
Mm.
The power of coming into someone's house every day with laughter, which is real. And
Right.
Cosby, what the things about that show, you talking about that show, was you laughed with him, you laughed at him, but you saw yourself in it. It was aspirational. Those little white kids said, no, y'all can be president.
Right.
Conceive of you as America's Black father, we can conceive of you that way. So I think the film is dynamite for sure, but the power of coming into someone's living room on the regular, man, don't sleep on that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Please.
Yeah, Jabari, I wonder if you can lead off on this one. So we
Okay.
can't really talk about the 90s without paying attention to the significance of fashion, to music, right?
Yeah.
So when we think about the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, what is it for this new generation that they're still finding something fresh about that show?
Yeah, we just feed off of that nostalgia. We just really feed off that nostalgia, and it's just something so special about it that our generation loves. And you know, we try to emulate or you know, mimic, you know, some of the style. You know, but fashion is cyclical. You know, it comes back around. But yeah, we just adore the 90s, and I know I have growing up, and I know so many people that are like, oh, I wish I was born in the 90s because it just seems like such a better time to be alive. And I don't know, I guess you all could speak more to that because I wasn't around, but yeah, we're definitely infatuated with the 90s for sure.
But Jabari, I mean, you certainly were how were you influenced by the 90s?
How was I influenced? Oh, majorly. I mean, everything that I was watching from maybe 3 to 17 was like 90s movies. You know, all of the film and TV from the 90s definitely influenced me to become an artist. And yeah, so major influence.
Okay. Felice?
Again, for the sake of time, I do want to make sure that I have a chance to ask this question of you, Mr. Jackson. You know, The Last Days of Ptolemy Gray is a wonderful show, first of all, and so congratulations on that. but it's
Thank you.
also a program like what we're doing right now, thinking about Black memory, thinking about questions of community, identity. So can I just ask you, how do you think about the way that your own memories have shaped your art and your art practice? What is it about that series in particular that caught your attention and your imagination?
Well, first of all, it wasn't a series, it was the book, and understanding who Ptolemy was, where he came from, what that environment is. It's totally different for me because I'm a child of segregation. So I didn't go to school with a white kid till I got to college. I didn't have a white teacher till I got to college. Everybody I knew was Black. It was, it took a village for real. So when I look at, the lives and things that are happening inside that story, it's easy for me to just encapsulate it all in a Black world. That all of Ptolemy's friends, all the people, he interacted with, most of his life were Black. And that this story is a story that, yes, I hope a white audience can watch and understand because it's about Alzheimer's and the disease and everything else. But the sense of community that happens inside that story is a Black story, that these people took care of themselves. I mean, one of the interesting things that used to happen when we were pitching the story is people would always try and say, well, can we make Robin a family member? I go, well, no, because it's one of those things that we do in our community when there's, a loose person around and they come to your house a lot, they become your relatives, they become your family, or we become their families. And, they didn't understand that. And people watching the series grabbed it immediately and went, oh my God, this little girl just attached to this guy. Now they're like closer than his real family. And, all the usual problems that happen in the midst of all that, money comes in and, money changes everything. Funeral, people start looking at each other a different kind of ways, trying to figure out who's gonna get Big Mama's house or who's gonna get Big Mama's dishes and all, so stuff happens. Mm-hmm. So all these things were part and parcel of making it very relatable to the audience that it was. I don't even want to say the audience it was made for, because it's made for a viewing audience, but it's a Black story. It's a story for us. A story about us that celebrates us in a whole nother way, and how we care for the members of our family who can't care for themselves, or we throw them away until somebody comes by and polishes up that thing and you see it and go, oh, wait a minute, that's still worth something. Let me get that back. So all those things were happening there. And, my experience with the family members of mine that had Alzheimer's and dementia, and how I want to honor their lives and have people see those people as, yes, they may be damaged a bit, but they're still worthwhile. They're still part of you. And you owe them the care that they gave you when you were coming up in their time of need. So all those things are very, very, very important parts of that story that, I'm just really happy that people loved it the way they did. Because like I said, I'm one of those, nosy people that goes on Twitter and checks to see if people are watching that I'm in and what they say about it. So very pleased with all.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I wonder if we can open up that question a bit. I think this question of, who's been traveling with you, who's been community, especially for those of you who've had such long and really incredibly important careers. Can you talk about community and how that's been such a major aspect of moving from the 90s into the 2000s?
I wondered oftentimes if young actors have the experience that I had when I was in New York. And just last Sunday, being at the Tonys, I felt it and I remembered it, and it was so glorious and so joyous to be in that room with all those people that support each other. Everybody wants everybody to succeed, unlike what happens in the other business that we're in. As we saw at the Oscars, things happen that people vie with each other every week about who's gonna make the most money or who's gonna open bigger or who's gonna do that. Whereas everybody on Broadway wants everybody to succeed because they're all artists and they want people to go to the shows and they want it to be alive and stay alive. And that was so evident last week in what was happening there in that room and the feeling that I was glad to know that, you know, all these young actors sort of feel the way it used to feel when I was there.
It was so nice seeing you and LaTanya there at the Tonys. I'm sorry, I didn't see the show, but that she directed. But for me, you know, the group of folks I met in the 90s, John especially, but you know, Gina and Reggie, I mean, we're all still very, very tight. You know, John and I made 5 movies together, you know, at the studio and afterwards as producers, which Sam was in one of them, our last effort, Black Snake Moan. So it's that part for me has stayed really tight. And we call each other up. We ask each other about writers, about, you know, filmmakers or different heads of departments. And we depend on each other to tell the truth, you know, because sometimes you call for references and people are like, oh yeah, they were good or whatever. But like, we keep it real. And I really value that. So that's my experience.
I want to hop in. I'm in a very unique situation. You know, like I said, when I was getting started, one of the first shows that I did as well was the Sinbad pilot. And that was Sinbad and TK Carter and Salma Hayek and myself. And, you know, it was still kind of new to me. And there was one PA that I was talking to, and she was, you know, a stage PA, and she was just answering phones. And, you know, me, I like to make friends with a little bit of everybody. And we were talking, and she's like, no, I'm a writer. And I said, okay, I see you. You're a writer. What are you doing? And it turned out it was Mara Brockett Keel, who later created Girlfriends. And she and I, you know, we kept in touch, you know, throughout the years. And then Girlfriends came about, and that was like 8 years long. You know, I auditioned, I never got cast, but I jumped through the hoop and jumped through the hoop. And she was like, I always saw you, Wendy. I always saw you. And she developed a role, Tasha Mack. Here we are now, you know, carrying through. I still had to jump through the hoops, but it was that core of conversation and that relationship and that common unity that I like to call community that really kind of kept us passionate, you know, number one, about what we do, but then number two, in touch with each other. So, but it all goes back, and I got to piggyback on what you said, Sam, to theater. My community out here is my theater community. And it's very different in LA because it's not a big theater community, but what is, and those have been my friends and I want to say my backbone for over 30 years. So we still work in collaboration, even with my nonprofit, you know, and still produce shows in LA where it's not as big of a theater community, but it's important.
Yeah, but it's still a huge joy though, that you watch people succeed that you were with, or they were in a place that they were doing other things. You know, it's like now when I see Giancarlo and people talk about, oh my God, he's so amazing. And I say, he's been amazing.
Right,
you know,
right.
He's been amazing since he was, you know, doing Zoom Man.
And the Sign, yeah.
And the Sign at Negro Ensemble Company, you know, 1,000 years ago. But now all of a sudden it's like, geez, this dude is brilliant. He's been brilliant. And thank God you guys finally discovered that, because he got things that put him out there, you know, that, you know, Breaking Bad and Gus, and now he's on The Boys, and he's on The Mandalorian, he's here, he's directed, you know, it's just great to see.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Niecy Nash and I, we were dancers together in high school. And it's like, oh girl, you know, so we're still the best of friends. So it's like those that came up in the trenches, it's so good to have that and to have that support group. Yeah.
I remember at 14, the moment that I saw Ain't Supposed to Die a Natural Death, my dad's play on.
Getting ready to happen again.
A theater.
And Bill Duke was playing in it, and Minnie Gentry. And I saw folks, I was like, oh man. And I was like that. And I saw it was transformative. People left that play different than when they went in.
Dick Anthony Williams.
Exactly. And I saw that, man, and I said, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to do. And I was just talking to Bill about that the other day. So when I was, it's interesting because Sam, you talked about dementia. My dad had late stage dementia. And he couldn't remember names, but he could remember lyrics.
Wow.
So when I would hang out with him, I would sit with Dad in his apartment on 56th Street. I'd hold his hand, would watch the sunlight go down. and we would sing tunes. And we would sing stuff, you know, there I go, there I go, there I go. But we'd also sing music from his plays. And he could remember it. And I told him, I said, Pop, I'm going to try to get Ain't Supposed to Die a Natural Death back. And I was talking with Kenny Leon and Leah Volek, who's doing MJ. And you're right, brother, they're bringing it back.
Oh yeah.
But that was that moment, that seeing it in theater night after night. And going back,
Man, I had that album Brush Soul with your daddy eating that piece of cornbread on the cover of that album. I used to play that thing so much when I was in college. It was like, oh my God, this is amazing. You know, come on.
Yeah.
Seems like we keep coming back to theater. That's very interesting. Yeah.
I think there's also, you know, you think of films may be more of a director's medium. The director decides where the camera looks, how close it goes in, how wide it goes out, where it goes to. TV is more of a writer, producer's medium, but theater is an actor's medium. The director doesn't call cut. The actor directs your eye. You can look as an audience member anywhere you want to. And that audience gives you something that makes it alive and vibrant and present right now.
Every night.
Every night.
Yeah. I never met an actor that hadn't done a play till I got here.
Oh,
You know? I was like, wait a minute, where you learn to act?
YouTube. No.
I worked with your dad on what I think was one of his last films, Peebles. It was him and Diane Carroll together. They were a couple, and it was such a joy. He was macking all over that set. I have to tell you, it was super fun. He was great. I'm jealous because I think that actor theater thing is, I see how tight it is. And, you know, I started in this business as an executive and transitioned to a producer and writer and other things. But when I came up, there was no community of Black execs.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It was like me and I don't know, Kevin Jones, like there was just not that many people. And when I look around today, I am so pleased. And I think it's the direct correspondence to all the different Black content that's out there, because there's gatekeepers that get it. There's gatekeepers that want to tell those stories, that can pitch it to their bosses and get it out there. So yeah, times have changed.
Good. We need y'all opening the doors, man. You can't just be content creators. That's part of what my dad's fight was about, was that we could start to green light and not just be job seekers.
Yeah,
absolutely.
You know, in terms of how our image has evolved in the space, there's certainly a lot more broader, opportunities for men than there are for women. Let's talk about the gender in this industry and the evolution of roles and opportunities and for women of color, Black women specifically.
What you talking about? These women are doing all kind of stuff out here. There ain't no Black man comedy sketch show. Ain't no Black Easter race. What you talking about?
Well, you know what? I do have to piggyback on what you're saying, Sam. I do feel like we are in an influx of so many strong women behind the camera. Ava DuVernay, like I said, Mara Raquel, Issa Rae and what she is doing, but in front of the camera, it's different. But whereas in the 90s, it was so strongly male driven, your Cosby, your Steve Harvey, your Bernie Mac, your D.L. Hughley, everybody had a show. But now I feel like it's opening up, and so many women, Shonda Rhimes, oh my goodness, what an empire that she has created in putting especially Black women in positions of power, not only in front, but behind. So I think we are in the middle of a renaissance of change. I'm looking forward to it. So many, I'm directing, it's so many. Oh, yay, thanks, Sam. So that means I got you for my next project. No, Tasha Smith, that's another part of my community as well. We had a serious conversation in New York because she's with Stars, and what she had to petition to 50 Cent just to get her to be a part of the pilot of Black Mafia, but thank God she was there, because she was able to really be of agency to so many actors that wouldn't have been considered, and they were theater actors, but they were good. But it was like, well, who are they? And I'm specifically talking about, McCole White, who has done an incredible job. But we are moving in in a very progressive way. And I'm excited about that as a woman, as a
Well,
woman of color.
in the 90s, I did after New Jack, they asked me what I wanted to do. Whatever seat you're sitting in, when you get a little heat, you probably get another shot at that. Anyway, I got a chance, and I was looking at the history of the first 47 settlers of Los Angeles, first 44, excuse me, 26 were African American, but you never saw that reflected in any Westerns. And so, if you saw a Western, America made more Westerns than any other genre of film. The Chinese dude was the deferential houseboy, women were pale and frail, the brother was scared and shuffling, the Mexican didn't need no stinking badges, he was the oily bandit, and the only good Indian was a dead Indian. So I did a multi-culti, or what they would call a old Jack City, called Posse, they called it. And now I'm doing, for the first time, I'm gonna do another Western, but Whoopi Goldberg is playing Stagecoach Mary. And we have some badass women in the saddle this time. And we're playing, not Hollywood, we're playing them the way they looked and real. And so even in terms of bringing back something that I did in the 90s and saying, yes, but now let's put some of these sisters in the forefront of this, is exciting to do, because we can't just have heroes, we gotta have our sheroes.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
That's good to hear, because very often the most difficult thing every year when we are voting on the AAFCA Awards, for example, are finding variety of roles for Black women. And, this is usually very, very easy to narrow down who the men are, but it's often very, very challenging when we're selecting who our best actress, our best supporting actress is. So good to hear that there are opportunities in the pipeline for sisters to be seen. Jabari, talk about when you were, the phone rang and this opportunity for Bel Air reboot was brought into your life.
Yeah, life-changing. So like everyone, I was doing theater as well. I went to school in Philadelphia, University of the Arts, to study musical theater. And I was just around. I didn't have a job. It was just kind of like sleeping on friends' couches and auditioning and just sending it into the ether and not hearing anything back for a long time, maybe a year. I mean, not as long as it could have been, but yeah, a year. And Bel Air came into my email, and I just knew it was me. And so I just, surrendered to the process, and I ended up booking it. And Will gave me that call. It was life-changing for sure. Very surreal.
Wow.
And yeah, I've been on this ride ever since. Yeah.
How is this 21st century version of the character though different from the version that Will inspired?
I mean, it's just more authentic. We have to lean into the authenticity of the story. What does it look like when a 16-year-old young man comes from Philly and leaves everything that he knows and goes to LA, and he has to, adapt to a new system? What does that look like?
He goes to Bel Air.
Oh, to Bel Air. Yeah, excuse me. Yeah, exactly. To Bel Air. And yeah, so what does that look like now? And we really had to lean into the authenticity of it and the stakes of the situation. And I was super, super excited about that. I remember reading the script and I was like, oh yeah, this has something to say. And I knew people were going to be skeptical about the project, obviously, just, from the nature of what it is, right? But I was super excited to be a part of it, and I have a great support system. And, everyone really, really supported me and what I brought to the project. And, I lived in Philly for a long time as well, so I could just bring that natural Philly swag, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really love the dynamic of the new show in terms of the mixture of drama and I guess what this generation's lives are, because Sam Art Williams, who was one of the creators of the original show, was a really great playwright. He worked with the ensemble company, and I did one of his plays for years, a play called Home. But they wrote a comedy show, and they made it be that. This show reflects who you guys are as young people and how you relate to each other and the world in a very honest and real way, and I really appreciate that about the show and what you bring to it.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Wonderful. I was there at the premiere, and one thing I was like, oh, I wasn't expecting to be immersed in the world. You know what I mean? There's one thing to show us what it's like to be Black, but there's another thing in how to be Black. And I feel like you guys are so raw, and it's just so real, and it's just so like you said, authentic. So
Thank
thank
you.
you for that. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, they definitely wanted to lean into what does it look like when you're successful in Black as well,
Mhm.
and do you lose, you know, one when you gain the other, and I think in the original it was very much, you know, Will was coming into Bel Air and teaching the Banks family how to be Black again, you know what I mean, or find that, and they definitely wanted to lean far from that in this telling, and so I was super excited about that as well, because there's something about home, you know. It's just like, you know, you can't really lose that part of you. And what does that look like? I'm still learning that. I'm literally still learning that. Been going through that since I got out here. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
You got to find your community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting you were talking about theater as well too, because it's just so different in the theater world. I grew up in theater, and yeah, there is just such a sense of community, and you know, going to rehearsals every day and really just like chipping away at this at a
But
project.
there's a sense of struggling together that you and the
Right.
other actors have, you know, when you're bouncing around from audition to audition, and you
Yeah.
know, you talk to each other, you hang out together, you eat together, you do stuff. Yeah, you get in your car, you go to an audition, you go home, and everybody sees you now as the competition because you're the working actor. You know?
Right.
Oh, that guy's here again. You know, so it's not the same.
Yeah.
We have our
Surprise.
first question from the audience. That really deals with your work environment. I mean, is it different today? I would imagine that a lot of the shows that you were involved with in the 90s probably were helmed by white directors and showrunners and writers, et cetera, et cetera. And today it's really different. Like what we were just speaking to earlier, talking about Shonda and Ava and you know, Kenya. So has that changed? Has that shift changed in how you're able to do your work, how you're able to absorb, you know, the characters that you play?
You asking that everybody?
Yeah. I'm asking you primarily, Mr. Jackson.
Me primarily.
No, I'm asking everybody.
You know, I work with Black directors, you know, back then and, you know, now. For me, the biggest shift in the business, period, is the absence of film. You know, that young directors have no idea how much it costs to make a movie because they got a chip. So they don't know you need to say cut, or you don't need to do 90 takes because you can't process all that film, and you can't, you know, they have no idea how much it costs to make a movie, or the necessity of brevity of making your day. You know, I'm still about that. I understand the business aspect. You know, we got a day, we got a thing to do. The crew is tired. Come on, let's get this done. Let's get out of here. But yeah, there are more people of color everywhere. You know, on set. You know, in every department. You know, it's like when I first started. You know, they didn't have Black barbers. You know, so I didn't have hair anyway, so it didn't matter. Or when I did have hair, I just cut it off and went on in there. But now, you know, they didn't have Black barbers. They didn't have a lot of Black makeup artists. I was fortunate because I had Robert Louis Stevenson, who had been around for a while. He did Richard Pryor, and then he did Eddie for a long time. And then he became my guy, you know, which was great. And there are people around there, Black first ADs, you know, we didn't have any of those people, you know. So yeah, the whole color and sex aspect of who's in charge of what has changed drastically, and it's a wonderful thing. And there is a sense of comfort for a lot of actors being around that, or the crew changing in that way. It's kind of like if you work in New Orleans is basically the only Black Teamster group. You know, you go down there and say everybody's driving you around is Black. You know, and you know, it's great. And it's a sense of, like I said, I grew up in segregation, so I'm comfortable around a whole bunch of Black people. I'm good with that, you know.
You know, what was a trip for me was, I remembered, I just finished doing Wu-Tang, and it's RZA, you know. And so I was the producer director of season 2 and just did a couple for him. And to bring that whole sensibility to it every day is dope. I remember the first time, Sam, I was with a crew, and you know, the Obama was running and looked like he was going to win. And I was sort of, I didn't want to gloat, I didn't wear my t-shirt, you know what I mean? I just kept it cool. But I realized they started talking just free on the set. And I looked around and I said, oh yeah, it is us here. And the DP was white. And they said, oh man, he's used to us.
Right, exactly.
First time I was like, we want to be in polite company. We want to,
Right.
So,
I was actually shooting the first night he won. The first time he won, I was shooting that night, and everybody just stopped. And was like, the whole set just stopped and like cheered.
Wow. Yeah.
We know, that there's a memory that, when Jack Johnson became heavyweight champ of the world, they went out and lynched 18 brothers and sisters that night for being uppity. So we know the cultural backlash to this is Trump, the cultural backlash. So you kind of talked to like, you would have run off and go, yes, and then come back to the set. But we just did it, man. We just let loose. And it's been more and more sets now where I think we are a part of the American fabric in a different way. One last quick thing, when my dad did Sweetback, there was a guy from the Times that wrote about it and said, not only is the movie flawed technically, you can't understand the language, it's garbled, but it's based on a premise that would never happen, that police officers would bludgeon and beat a man to death. Because Sweetback stops the beating of a brother in the Black community. And for them, there's no two Americas. If you remember the dominant culture and every SAT is geared to you, it's hard to conceive of an alternate reality. So that was his report. He said, you couldn't understand the dialogue. My dad wrote the dude a letter. Said, I'm not telling you to change your review, but I'm challenging you to go to the hood and see the movie there. And to his credit, the guy went. He saw an audience that understood every word. He saw audiences up, and he left and said, for the first time, I'm not capable of truly reviewing the movie. Thus, I will review the phenomenon of the movie. And it was an interesting moment, I think, where America had to go, oh shit, this is happening without us.
Right.
What's going on?
He had live subtitles with what he got.
Right.
He didn't with people with live subtitles. He didn't have to read them, he could hear them.
Yeah.
That's why the Film Critics Association is so important. It's just
Absolutely. Thank you.
We need critics who understand us to comment. Because I had the same thing. I produced a movie called Burning Sands, and they were like, it was a Gerard McMurray's first movie about a Black fraternity at an HBCU. And the reviewer literally said, and they shaved their heads, I can't tell them apart. That's what the review said in the Hollywood Reporter.
But they never saw School Days?
I can't tell. Probably not. This reporter said, I can't tell them apart. And why would Black men beat on each other? Like it was
fathomable for them. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Gil, for all you do. I just
Absolutely.
have to shout that out.
Absolutely. Wow.
Right, because that was some TV Critics Award nominations yesterday, weren't they?
Well, ours are coming up on the 18th.
Yeah, I know. I saw the other ones yesterday. Whoever those people are.
And your show will probably be a part of it.
No, it was not.
Yes.
Your show will probably be a part of it. Actually, several of you will probably be getting your invitations.
Oh, great.
Felice, next question.
Yeah, this is actually a great segue to one of the audience's questions. So that question is actually about the Arsenio Hall show. So as we're thinking about venues for where Black artists and creatives actually discuss and talk about their work, this comment is saying that I haven't seen a dynamic late night talk show host since Arsenio Hall back in the 90s. And so they're curious about where you all, or not where you promote your work, but who do you watch these days when it comes to late night entertainment, but also forum where Black artists talk about their creativity and their craft?
Wow.
Well, my new late night show is Z-Way. I don't know if you guys are watching.
Yes.
What is that?
What is that?
She is so dope.
She is.
She is amazing. Yes.
She be coming for her folks.
Is
man.
that great?
It's so great.
And
It's so great.
Where is it? I haven't heard of it.
Charlamagne did not have more sense than to go on her show.
Yeah.
Hulu, you can find it on Hulu. It's for YouTube also.
And if
Star.
She is phenomenal.
Yeah, she is. She's great.
Yeah.
Well, other than that, I know. Is there any other platform?
I know Jennifer Hudson's getting her on. She's like,
I saw that.
Ellen. So that's
That's daytime, right?
daytime.
Yeah,
But
that's daytime.
And you have Trevor Noah.
Yeah.
and you got
Sherry, she's gonna be
But it's-
daytime, and yeah, Jennifer's
Yeah.
gonna be daytime. There is
Yeah.
no
But
late
are they
night
more
forums
of
like
a-
we used to have. There's no Sinbad
Oh,
or
right,
Arsenio or you
Mhm.
know,
Or Vibe, I remember that one, that was
Right.
one where we could sit and talk and connect and have some type of community. It keeps coming back to that, so.
that's a good hole in the
Yeah, the
programming.
big hole, yeah.
yeah, huge. Well, it always has been. It's been there, and they took the black news off BET, and then all those things just went away. So
Sam, where do you see things? How does the future, in your opinion, how does the future look? Because I know we're about to lose you. So
bright to me, I mean, all these young people, it's way brighter than when I started. You know what I mean? I mean, I look and I go across, I'm just, a jaded and kind of weird old person. I went through the All Black channel the other night, and I actually watched the trailers for everything on there the other night. And I didn't really want to stop watching anything, but I paid the $60 a year because, hey, it's the All Black channel. Why not? So it's only $60. So here. And I try and find things to watch on there. So there's a lot of things being done. There are a lot of people working, and there are people working in, mainstream things, and there's still like the independent looking series or the TV shows. Our friend Victoria's got like 5 shows on TV. And it's like, so I see people doing stuff, and I see young people having opportunities to be in the media or learn things that we thought they were going to be taught in school, but they can sit at home and watch now and watch other actors do these things and aspire to become what those people are. We had to figure it out, or people would always say, well, what are you going to fall back on? You say, well, when I make a choice to fall back on something, I've already given up on my dream. So
Right.
You don't have a fallback. You just got to charge. You got to go through it. So I see the future is bright for all these young people. Like I said, there are people everywhere. They understand all the jobs. People know about makeup now. People know about hair. People know about being camera operators. People know about being gaffers. People know about being all these things that people didn't know about other than being a star in front of the camera.
Yeah.
There is a future for everyone in this business, and, kids are learning to make movies on phones.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So all of this new technology has in fact been a real good thing. And all of these new avenues for platforms for people to show their work.
Mhm.
Yeah, the stories are getting told. That's the good news.
Well, that's good. Mario, same question to you. How does the future look?
Well, that's an interesting thing. I was trying to figure out. I was driving home last night and I was irritated by something. And I don't get irritated much. I said, what was it that was bothering me? I forgot. My face knew I was pissed off about something. I said, go back now. And I know what it was. I was looking at something that was showing how Fox News was positioning the January 6th hearing. And I started to think more and more about how the fight we had in Juneteenth and the fight we had to vote and how hard we worked. And I was wondering when this power in our community is going to come over and deal with some of that, because I'm concerned America's built on capitalism and democracy. And yes, in film, we're more part of the capital. We're more part of understanding if they can make money from us, we can make money from us. But I'm wondering how we harness that and make sure that we don't lose our abilities to vote. That I'm concerned about this next election. And I'm wondering how we mesh it. And I've been talking to folks in the political realm about how do we get our young folks that are excited about these TV shows and are watching these TV shows, and how do we bring our power to that and energize those folks? Because I think we're about to see some real shit. So I'm just gonna say it. So I'm excited about what's happening in our business, absolutely. But I think we're gonna need to take like you saw, Brother Muhammad Ali was a fighter, but took that and said, in this realm, I'm still gonna fight the isms, lookism, sexism, racism, classism. We're getting our shows, but we're gonna have to turn that energy to make sure we have the right to vote, to make sure that women have the right to choose. And we're gonna have to, and there's a little bit of a sense of, well, I don't do politics. Well, if you don't do politics, politics will do you. If they can make it to turn off and so disgusting that anyone with integrity will steer clear of it, and they'll write a play but forget to vote.
Wow.
So I'm a little concerned about that. But other than that, I think I agree with Brother Sam. I think it looks bright.
Yeah.
And Wendy?
Wow, that was powerful. I'm excited, but at the same time, I feel like we are in the middle of a revolution that is not really happening. You know, you look at the 70s, you know, music was a reflection of what was going on. And then you go to the 90s, you know, music, art, fashion was a reflection of that. And then where we are today, I don't see it or feel it as much. You know, one of the things that coming out of COVID and quarantine, I was like, you know, I was surprised there wasn't more music that was reflective of everything that is happening. So as excited as I am about all these different opportunities and these different platforms and these different content creators, I am concerned that we are not really looking at a mirror of what is happening. So I agree exactly with what you're saying, Mario. We are at a very critical time, you know, not just about what happened in January 6th, but are we becoming desensitized as creators as well with, you know, the guns, with the shootings, with this, not that we have to go back to, you know, like the 90s was very crack. It was very, you know, gang heavy. It was this, but now we're in a war amongst just walking outside of our doors. So, you know, I feel as artists, sometimes we have a responsibility of showcasing what is happening right now. And I'm not seeing that in a lot of the content that is out there. So I feel a sense of responsibility, and even, you know, our young people, I want to hear their voices. What is it that, you know, they have to say about it? It's like, as much content that is out there, you know, we're having to go through this to see what is really going on. And I think Get Out, and, you know, that movie was such a phenomenon because what it did, you know, I can't say it was a Black movie per se. I don't know how you categorize it, you know, but it was directed, written, led, starred, but it was a movie that for me, it showed sometimes how it is to be Black, not just because you're Black, but I don't know. I just want to see more thought-provoking content that gets us to the table to have the conversation. That's not just a conversation, but it ends with results. It's time to just do something. I saw a play, it was called A Heated Discussion, and it was at the LA Theater Center. This was about 2 weeks ago, but it examined everybody. They had Wilbur James Baldwin, King, Malcolm X, you know, and then you had Bob Marley, and then you had every Black icon throughout the diaspora, all in one room to have a heated conversation. And throughout all these years, even from Ida B. Wells to present day, we're still having the same conversation.
Certainly we are. And Miss Allain?
I was just gonna say, we have to be the change you want to see. You know what I mean? Like right before 2020, right before the election, I got a call from Ava and Tracy Ellis and Gina and Tessa and all these women who were involved in this group. And we put on a series of shows called the Zoom Where It Happens. And in the Zoom Where It Happens, we took classic TV sitcoms, we repopulated them with Black voices, and we sent it out for free, but then we'd have a discussion about where's your voting place and how important it was and about the census and stuff. And we found out we reached, like, you know how they do, billions of hits or whatever, but like, we have to do it. You know what I mean? We have to do it. We can't wait for somebody else. So I think if all of us had a project that spoke to the current times, that would be a great impetus for the rest of us to get it together. I agree, and it's scary.
Yeah, and I loved that Zoom platform. Thank you for that. It was great.
Mr. Jackson, you were saying something, motioning to say something earlier, or were you?
You talking to me?
Yeah, I thought you were saying like you wanted to.
You went like
something.
that. You had something. I jumped in.
No, I was just pointing to you saying yes. That was
okay.
I was giving you a yeah.
That was an amen.
Right.
Yeah, amen on all that, you know.
Yeah.
Right,
We
right.
got to identify somebody though. I mean, we really do, but that's a whole nother conversation. But we got to identify some people to get in there and affect change. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And
At the
we
local
really need
level.
to do that. We need to do
At the
that
local
sooner
level.
than later.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. Oh, yes.
Because they're up there in the school board and the
Mhm.
local politics and we're
Council
sitting
district.
back waiting to vote
Mhm.
for president and vice president. It's too late.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Felice.
So I know we don't have a lot of time left, and I do want to at least address some of the questions that's come in from the audience. We started to touch on this a little bit earlier in the conversation, and that was about the more international impact of your work. And I think based on what we're talking about right now, you know, certainly the questions around anti-Black racism, around concerns about power, fascism, authoritarianism, again, these are topics that people are addressing all over the world. So again, the question that's coming from the audience is about your own awareness of the impact of your work internationally. And they're wondering if you could share a bit about those connections.
Well, I deliberately traveled around the world with my work, in particular after my dad and I did a movie on the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense. It's a very hard movie to get. Sometimes it almost seems deliberately so. But in that movie, my dad had written a book on the Panthers, and in that movie, we posited that the rise of hard drugs in the Black community was a deliberate move to medicate the revolutionary, so that if you cut off, you had Malcolm and you took him out, you stopped the movement, that movement. If you had Martin, you took him out, could you stop that movement? You cut off the head of the stake, the body will die. But so the Panthers, realizing that, had Huey, had Bobby, had Eldridge, had all these, had Chicago chapters everywhere. And we saw the rise in the 50s, there was some heroin and some reefer, but there wasn't the level of drugs we had later on when those communities got powerful and started to come together and vote and get revolutionized. And so it was almost like Panther was a prequel to what would set the groundwork, set the table for a film like New Jack City. When we took that film abroad, and when we showed it here, there was a powerful right-wing group that took out ads saying, "Don't see Panther, the 2-hour lie," and they ran them around Times Square. Wow. And a bunch of people got together, powerful Black voices, and said, "How dare you cultural trespassers once again try to define our agenda for us, determine for us what we should see about ourselves." Wow. So when my pop and I took Panther to the Locarno Film Festival, and we won the Silver Leopard Award, this one Italian journalist said, "We knew there was an agreement that if the hard drugs stayed in the Black community, it would be seen as a self-cleaning oven. We understand that. It's not new to us. We know Americans don't want to hear that." And so it was really interesting to take a film abroad like the Black Panther Party film and see the different reactions and understandings that people had. And they talked about the Boxer Rebellion, where China was trying to sell opium to the Chinese and keep them down with drugs, and the use of drugs or firewater with the Native American communities to medicate whole entire communities. And what's interesting is, after Malcolm said freedom by any means and King says freedom by peaceful means, they kill them both. But 50 years later, you got cats in the artistic community who conflate freedom with money. And instead of saying freedom by any means necessary, they're saying get paid by any means necessary. Wow. So now you've juxtaposed those two things, not understanding that, as Paul Robeson says, when you buy into the values, the paradigm of people who would buy and sell you as a people, what have you yourself become? And I think one of the things that concerns me about our field, and I love seeing the plethora of all we are, but when we just head nodding and rapping and not putting the consciousness behind it, you can fall into the trick bag of thinking success is money. Well, crack makes money, but it ain't good for you. Fossil fuels make money, but they're gonna kill us. You know what I mean? So we have to stop and say, well, now that we're in the room where it happens, you know what I mean? What do we really want to say? What do we want to get out there? And I think that's when young brothers and sisters come up to me, I say, really think about that. Don't just don't just mirror what you've seen. Think about what is success for you and your people, and how do you really affect change through your art?
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
Sam?
I'm just smiling and listening to Mario use all these old aphorisms like trick bag and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Hilarious.
That's Melvin talking. That's Melvin in my ear.
Yeah,
I love it.
know, but securing the bag became the thing, and it is the thing. Like you said, people, conflate, money or getting rich with, freedom and everything else, but the way the world is constructed now and the way that, young people see the world and how our politics work, it's difficult to get out there and to get the nation building going. I was reading this article today about how important, Juneteenth is compared to critical race theory. And Juneteenth is the important thing because it brings us together. It's like this, it was crazy. I can't start talking about those things, but if we can listen to what you just said about, the various things that were done to stop a revolution, because we watched it happen. And I remember in '69 when they took every drug off the street but heroin, because they wanted to kill, not just, the Black movement, but, those young hippies who were out there, fighting the war and everything else. It happens all the time. So all this new stuff is out there now, and nobody knows what's in any drug they're using, because, weed's become legal. So now they, put, fentanyl and all this other stuff in it. So, everything else is happening, and they're deadening people to the plights we're in, except for the fact now that everything costs so much that securing the bag has to be the thing. You can't drive your car anymore for $1 worth of gas and go all the way across town all day long. That just ain't happening. Or you can't go in the grocery store and just buy food because food costs so much. So you have to be very selective about what you're getting, to feed a family, because you have to buy things that you can buy in bulk, like rice and things like that. And you cannot, splurge. So you don't have the breathing space to relax anymore. Everything is about, trying to take care of yourself or trying to take care of things. Even the entertainment aspect got changed because of COVID. People can't go to the movies, but they can sit at home and watch, television, and they can't afford to buy streamers. So now they're like taking away people's ability to share passwords. So everything's conspiring against people being able to relax and have a healthy state of mind and transfer that to their kids, their families, and have joy. Everything's about, stress a bit, even going to school, not being able to go to school, not being able to afford people to take care of your kids. So the world has changed in a drastic way. And what we do is a luxury. We are fortunate that we're able to be creatives in a world where creatives are valued now, because we are the outlet for people to get away from themselves, which has always been. I always said that about going to the movies. People go to movies because they don't want to think about paying their bills for at least an hour and a half, 2 hours at some point in a week, and we gave them that opportunity by being entertainers or by being artists. Even if you just go out and go to a museum somewhere, you can walk around and look at some paintings, or you can walk around and listen to some people sing for free in the park. Those things are being taken away, and the world's becoming a more stressful place. And we're needed even more than people understand. And we have to do all we can to make sure that we not only honor ourselves, but honor humanity in the way that our ancestors did, and entertain and take care of our village. And that's what I'm trying to do, and hopefully, that we can all be able to do that.
Beautiful.
Stephanie, any thoughts?
Yeah, I had my say. I think Jabari is going to close us out.
Jabari?
Are you excited about the future? I think that
Yes.
Right.
His future.
The future.
You are the future.
Yes, well, yes, we are the world, we are the people. No, I'm super excited about the future. My generation, I'm excited to be able to take the power back and to be able to tell our stories in the way that we want to do it. When I think about social media and I think about YouTube and I think about all these platforms that we have now to be able to express ourselves and how the studio, views us and sees that. I think about Morgan Cooper, the creator of Bel Air, where he, took a few $1,000s that he had and just created this fan-made trailer that, blew up, right? And the studio saw it. And, the idea of Bel Air wasn't really born in a boardroom, right? Like it was made from the creator. And I feel like we have the opportunity now as the new generation to impose our ideas onto the world in a way that has been vastly different than any other generation. And I'm excited about that. And I feel like we are change makers and groundbreakers, and we aren't afraid to let our voices be heard when that comes to voting and anything in the political realm and anything in the artistic realm as well. I feel like the future is definitely bright for this generation. And I'm excited. I was just really like sitting down and listening to everything that everyone was saying and just taking it in because it's like so much information. And I'm like, what do we do? Because I feel like I'm very solution based, you know what I mean? And it's like, okay, what are the next steps? What does that look like for us? What does that look for my day to day? And as having this influence now and this accessibility, this access to so many resources, like what does that look like for me? And I'm still trying to figure it out. But yeah, I'm super excited about the future for myself and for my generation.
Well, we're excited for you.
Yeah.
Wendy, Mario, Jabari, Sam, and Stephanie, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We
See you
appreciate
now,
it.
y'all.
This
Well,
was great. Thank you,
all
guys.
right. Hope to see you somewhere on a set somewhere. Hopefully.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We appreciate
All right.
each of your contributions to the culture, and certainly the African American Film Critics Association. You can count on us to continue to support your efforts.
Thank you.
We're going to turn things over to Roya, who's going to close out for us today.
Well, thank goodness for our future, and so grateful to all you trailblazing creators who have paved the way. Thank you for all of our panelists for such an inspiring, thoughtful discussion, and thank you to our audience for engaging with us. And just a reminder that on Monday at the Aero Theater, we have a screening of The Last Days of Ptolemy Gray, which is the crown on the retrospective on Sam Jackson. And happy Juneteenth.